From Recorded Future News and PRX, this is Click Here. For most of cinema's history, movies have made one pretty basic assumption, that you can see them. Which means there are all kinds of things a movie doesn't bother to tell you. A look between two characters, a hand reaching for something, the thing happening silently in the last 5 minutes that explains the entire ending. If you can't see those things, someone has to decide what to tell you and what not to, which turns out to be a much more interesting question than it sounds. In fact, there's an art to it. From Recorded Future News and PRX, this is Click Here, a show about how technology is changing everything. I'm Dina Temple-Raston. Today, our colleague Sarah Quevedo takes us inside a part of filmmaking most of us never think about, the voice that tells you what you can't see, and what happens when that voice stops being an afterthought and starts helping shape the movie itself. We'll be right back.
I'm Sarah Quevedo, and you're listening to Click Here. Thomas Reed grew up going to the movies.
I'm a Gen Xer, so the early 70s was still a time when you got dressed up to go to the movies.
For Thomas, film was an essential part of his story, including his love story with his wife.
When my wife and I were dating, we would go to a multiplex, and I'm not confirming this, but allegedly we would go from one theater to the other on a Saturday afternoon and just watch movies all day.
Thomas lost his left eye to cancer as an infant, and then in adulthood, as a result of the first treatment, he lost his right eye too.
I mean, like most people, I never really considered what the experience of movies or any sort of visual content would be like for a blind person. It wasn't until soon after the surgery removing my right eye when I wanted to take a break from all of these thoughts that were rolling around in my head. And movies were always great for that. Escape.
This was in 2004. Thomas turned on the television and started a film for the first time since losing his sight. And he could kind of follow what was happening, but there were also huge blanks in the narrative.
Because there were so many things I was not getting that, weren't covered in the dialogue. And I stuck it out because I'm a trooper like that. And I got to the end, and this was one of those movies that the ending sort of resolved itself silently. There was no dialogue, maybe the last 3 to 5 minutes or something like that. And the film concluded, and I was pretty pissed off.
Furious, not because the movie was bad, but because he had no idea what had happened. The ending unfolded almost entirely without dialogue, and Thomas was left sitting there, trying to piece it together. Later that night, Thomas confided in his wife about what had just happened.
She ended up finding out when that movie was going to play again, watched it to tell me the ending, which is so cool.
It's a sweet story. His wife literally watched the movie so she could narrate the ending back to him. But it's also a frustrating one, because suddenly something that had been so essential to Thomas's life was now out of reach to him. But then, his wife discovered something else. A version of what she had done for him, narrating what had been left out of the dialogue in the film, actually already existed.
And she also ended up looking up some information and found out a little bit more about audio description.
Audio description. In the most basic sense, it's a narrator who steps into the spaces between dialogue and translates what's happening on screen into words. The look on a character's face, a hand reaching for a door, a key detail that clues you into a character's motives, the thing sighted audience absorb without even thinking about it. For people who are blind or have low vision, audio description turns those visual details into part of the story. Actually, let's try it right now to give you a feel for what this is like. If it's safe for you, close your eyes. Imagine You've just sat down in a movie theater. The previews have ended, the lights go down, the movie begins. This is A Quiet Place Part 2, a film that notoriously features not very much dialogue and a lot of action. Okay, so you can hear something is happening, labored breathing, tense scoring, but you're left listening for clues, trying to assemble a picture in your mind from the fragments. Maybe you'd lean toward the person sitting next to you and whisper, "What's happening?" That feeling that everyone else is getting to experience something you're not, that's what many blind moviegoers experienced up until very recently when they sat down in a movie theater or turned on a movie on a streaming platform. Now, let's try this again. Same scene, only this time with audio description.
The boy and the girl run down a corridor ahead of Mom. A man grabs them and pulls them aside. Mom runs after them. The man steps out and covers her mouth. A bandana covers most of his face. He motions her to silence.
Now you can sense what you suspected before. There is a lot happening in this scene, and the descriptions bring it to life. The sounds are connected to action. The story begins to unfold. For Thomas Reid, discovering audio description felt a little like discovering movies all over again, a way back into the medium he loved. So you might assume the problem had been solved, but it hadn't, because Thomas quickly learned that there's a big difference between having audio description and having good audio description. An instance that still sticks out to him was the experience of watching the film Black Panther.
You know, they described Wakanda as a futuristic-looking city, and that's pretty damn vague to me. I am inclined to think about the Jetsons when I think of a futuristic city. So the image that was created in my mind in that case was incorrect.
Or sometimes the descriptions just state the obvious. Say you're knee-deep in a film and the camera pans to the sky, and a description might say something like, "The sun is high in the sky."
You don't need to describe that. It's sort of like, duh, you know?
Other times they explain things that were already obvious from the soundtrack.
Like if the car engine is being revved up, vroom, vroom, and they say he revs up his engine or something. Come on, like, I know. You know, the thing with audio description is you're supposed to sort of give a viewer the information that they need to be able to interpret the story, not give the person the story, not hold their hand and walk them through the story.
Though other times, what describers don't include is the problem.
That could be whether it's the sex scenes, where they just really awfully describe sex scenes, or they're left out in total, or nudity is left out. Maybe sometimes some sort of violence might be left out or not described as, as clear as it is on screen. So those are the things that make you feel like a child. and that's, again, not a good feeling. Not a good feeling, because it's not as though that feeling is limited to audio description.
For Thomas, these kinds of patronizing omissions feel strangely familiar.
That's something that the community, the disabled community in general, deals with on a day-to-day basis, just interacting with people, with the public. And so to have that on a piece of art that you're trying to consume, one of the reasons we consume media is to escape and get away. And do you want to have to deal with that too? Then,
Part of the problem is that accessibility is often tucked in at the very end of the process, after the movie has already been made. So the creative decisions are finished, and then accessibility is just bolted on afterwards. It seems without any real thought about the experience of someone who's blind or has low vision. And there's actually a term for that, a disability dongle.
It's a term for a device that is supposedly invented for disabled people. It's supposedly an assistive technology, but in fact, it's useless
Mara Mills heads the Center for Disability Studies at New York University, and she says disability scholars coined this term because this practice is so prevalent across the history of supposedly assistive technologies. If you know where to look, she says, disability dongles are everywhere. Take ATMs in the early 1990s. Some included Braille, but the Braille didn't explain how to use the machine. It just listed a phone number. Or take a product like Olay face cream, marketed as being accessible.
Most beauty brands don't design products for physical disabilities. You spoke, we listened.
Oil of Olay face cream in a jar that was being sold with an optional, but you pay extra for it, cap with a Braille label on it. And that idea, it went viral. But the Braille label simply read face cream. How necessary was that? Also, the Braille, you would have to buy the Oil of Olay tub, and then separately get the cap.
The problem was that nobody had really asked blind people what would actually be useful. And that's what Thomas kept coming back to with audio descriptions. When they're slapped on at the end, they can end up gesturing to the blind community while still, in effect, excluding them.
To me, that just says we're not really thinking about being blind-centered. We're not thinking about the art.
Thinking about the art. That's the part that changes the question. Because what happens if accessibility isn't something you add after the movie is finished? What if it becomes part of making the movie itself? A group of filmmakers decided to find out, and they did it with a story you may already know. That's when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm Sarah Quevedo, and this is Click Here. If you heard Tuesday's episode, you already know Joe Ingresia, the blind kid with perfect pitch who figured out how to control the telephone system with a whistle. The documentary about his life gave the filmmakers a chance to try something different. Instead of making the movie first and figuring out accessibility later, they thought about how to make it part of the process from the beginning.
We wanted to show the film with open audio description, first and foremost, to make sure that any and all blind or low vision people who wanted to come see the film had an equal experience.
That is Will Butler, one of the film's producers.
We wanted it to be a really delightful experience for blind and low vision viewers. But then the secondary effect was helping to build awareness for everyone else.
And to do that, they brought in blind collaborators early in the process, including Thomas Reed, who we've been talking to. They also brought in an access artist named Cheryl Green, who specializes in audio description. The two watched an early cut of the film together over Zoom. Cheryl would describe what she was seeing. Thomas would tell her what was working and what wasn't.
And we would stop pretty regularly and discuss, did you feel like there was enough room? Did you follow that scene? Or I would stop and say, hey, there's not room at all for me to describe such and such. Would it be a loss if the AD doesn't describe this?
AD, audio description. The whole time, Cheryl was taking notes, looking for places where description could be improved, looking for places where something important might be lost. And occasionally, looking for places the film itself might need to be adjusted to accommodate the descriptions.
Should we tell the filmmakers they need to insert a couple seconds at this point? Because it'd just be too much of a loss to not describe this thing.
The question changes the relationship entirely because now accessibility isn't being added to the film. It's helping shape the film itself. It's considering both the experience of blind audience members and the vision of the director, balancing the practical and the creative, and changing the work itself to meet the needs of both. Cheryl and Thomas went back and forth with the filmmakers. A blind script consultant weighed in too. Everyone looking at the same question from a slightly different angle. What information is essential? What can be left unsaid? And how do you make room for those details without changing the spirit of the film?
I was getting the non-blind director's feedback and the blind consultant's feedback on calls together and we would sort of negotiate lines.
Negotiate lines. It's an interesting way to think about it because traditionally, accessibility has been treated as a technology problem. But this wasn't a technical process. This was a creative one. The team wasn't trying to describe everything on screen. They were trying to decide what mattered. Eventually, all those conversations turned into a script. And when the descriptions were finally written, Thomas wasn't just consulting on the writing. He was helping bring it to life, something he does now. He's a professional audio narrator. Take a listen. Here he is narrating the Joy Bubbles film.
I sure do.
Fade to black. Red lights. Long, straight beams like guitar strings plucked by blinking orbs of crimson and gold. A spinning sphere. Red and hot paint. Waxy smears like a lava lamp.
They say when you go downhill, you pick up speed, which I did.
The finished Joy Bubbles film premiered at Sundance in January, and it was a first for the festival. Joy Bubbles was screened with open audio description, meaning the descriptions weren't tucked away on a separate audio track reserved for someone wearing headphones. The entire audience heard them. Blind audience members, sighted audience members, everyone.
We were a little nervous because we were not sure that people were going to get it, but the feedback was so wonderful. And nobody that we spoke to really found it to be distracting. It's just adding a kind of an additional layer of access that you can choose to engage with. Everybody gets something out of it.
Everyone gets something out of it. The narration might call attention to a detail in the frame, a gesture, a glance, a detail sitting quietly in the corner. It doesn't replace the film, it sits alongside it, like another storyteller in the room. The descriptions weren't pulling people out of the experience, they were becoming part of it.
It's something that we really hope more filmmakers embrace, and we're really excited to see it starting to take root in the festival circuit, because if we can have films be accessible to everyone at the very start, then they have a better shot of reaching people all along the way.
For decades, accessibility has mostly been treated as something you add after the fact. A final step, a separate track, an accommodation. But the Joy Bubbles team took a different approach. And maybe that's why this story belongs next to the one we told on Tuesday. Joe Ingressia found possibilities inside the telephone that its designers never imagined. The people who made the film about him, and the blind and disabled artists bettering audio description, like Thomas Reed or Cheryl Green, they're doing something similar. They stopped asking how to make a finished movie accessible or what the bare minimum of an assistive technology could be, and started asking, what if access was there from the beginning? What if it didn't just help you experience the art, but changed what the art could be? I'm Ser Quevedo. This is Click Here.
Click Here is a production of Recorded Future News and PRX. Today's show was written and produced by Megan Dietrich, Sean Powers, Erica Gutta, Zach Hirsch, and Maya Fawaz. It was edited by Karen Duffin and Sarah Quevedo and fact-checked by Darren Ankrum. Original music is by Ben Livingston with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. Our staff writer is Lucas Riley, our illustrator is Megan Goff, and our sound designers and engineers are Jake Cook and Jesse Neiswanger. I'm Dina Temple-Raston, and thanks for listening.